Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for our video podcast, MMA stories, and MMA news. Ed, got something to plug? Why don't you tell
Hmm.
the fans and the listeners what you got?
Yeah, it's actually so you guys get some fighter content on this week's podcast. First of all, apologies again for being away last week, but as I said week prior, I had the the daytime app job had kept me busy enough to that I could wasn't able to record, but I was able to do with my other work that I do with Spectation Sports. For you folks that are already crying about no UFC this weekend, Cage Titans 59 is this weekend. Heavyweight main event for the vacant title. Ras Hylton versus Brendan Battles. I got to speak with both men. I interviewed them both for Spectation Sports. I literally just finished a piece. I'm gonna fire it off after we finish this recording this podcast. But those interviews I do them over the phone. They're audio, and I'm going to add the audio of my. I should probably do both, but then it's going to be over an hour now. And you know, I did speak with Hilton before I spoke with Battles because he got back to me first, and I had a 25-minute conversation with Ras Hylton. For folks that, if you don't know the name, during COVID, he was the heavyweight fighter that Bellator kind of pulled in when they just needed to put people in a cage. And he fought. He was like the underdog. They called him the Rasquatch, Shamrock Sasquatch, or something like that. I forget what his nickname was. It's slipping my mind right now. But the only because it's slipping my mind is because he's a Shotokan karate martial artist, and he started talking about like his passion for traditional martial arts. And you guys know me and Matt love stuff like that. I mean, his of all, usually when you talk to a fighter, like what do you expect to happen if you win a title and stuff like that? The call from the UFC, belt or whatever. He wants to fight bare knuckle MMA because that's what he believes is true to his love for Shotokan karate. So I just literally, most interviews I do, you guys have seen them, they're like 10 minutes. I wound up talking 25 minutes with this guy, and he's actually agreed to come on the podcast in the future. So if he wins, we could be talking to the Cage Titans heavyweight champion on this podcast. However, his opponent Brendan Battles is also a solid dude too. Um, the matchup is definitely one you don't want to miss. So again, it's on Spectation Sports. If you sign up to watch it, use my code CARBAZIL, which is my Twitter handle on the bottom here. You get 20% off your first month or your annual subscription, and you will have some fights to watch this weekend instead of crying about no UFC. So the audio of that interview will follow this podcast just for you with Hilton. So I just wanted to plug that really quick before we start talking about the news that we missed while we were away.
Yes, I guess the big news the biggest news was
Speaking of
Francis.
heavyweights, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of heavyweights, the best heavyweight in the world is now under the banner of PFL, the Professional Fighters League. Francis Ngannou, uh, free agent, tested the waters a lot, was having trouble. A lot of people were kind of starting to badmouth him, and out of the blue, we wake up one day last week and suddenly he looks like he got a great contract for himself,
Mm-hmm.
great contract for his opponents when he does fight,
Yeah.
and some flexibility and stuff for a fighter that's 36 years old and the linear heavyweight champion of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, we're gonna try to keep this as positive as we can because really it comes down to UFC versus Ngannou
Mm-hmm.
is kind of how the this is played out. Anybody that's ever listened to me and you, I think would agree that for the most part, while we support the UFC and we're huge fans of the sport itself and we acknowledge all the great things they did, I think we take the fighter side when it comes to negotiations and really being able to step up and stand up for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and we've kind of always acknowledged the fighters, Fedors, the guys who are willing to kind of put their neck on the line, not necessarily uh, kiss the boots of the UFC
Mm-hmm.
and be able to be successful while doing that. The cyborgs and such like that
Mighty
you know,
Mouse.
Mighty Mouse, the people that are
Yeah.
willing to put their feet down and do it in other places. So, as far as unpacking, uh, the whole situation, how surprised were you it ended up being PFL?
I mean, all signs were pointing to that, as you heard about everything else not following through. Like when conversations went too long. I mean, personally, and this is me just being a Jersey asshole, but like I always get to the point like just fucking say something or do nothing. Like I start to lose interest. That's just how sports is. I mean, people are thinking about your most recent fight as the measuring stick. So if you're not fighting, I start to care less as far as the news goes. Not that I don't care about what they're going through, whatever. But yeah, when the news came out, I was just like, okay. And then when the details came out, the funny thing about the details is that um I kind of there are things, and I know a lot of it is fighter bashing and promoter puff up from Dana White. But there are things that he said that kind of make me put a question mark on. I mean, only time's going to tell, right? How good the deal is. But with the PFL, so he said something along the lines about like their ratings aren't great. They're not really selling out huge arenas and stuff like that. So you have to wonder. I mean, he used the term burning cash, that he did say. And then, in my mind, I'm just like, yeah, like for Ngannou, that's great. But long term, especially if you're not going to have him fight anytime soon, because, it's supposed to be boxing first at some point this year and then MMA next year, it's like, are the fans and the promotion going to get their money's worth? Um, I hope so, because it would definitely be great for the sport. I think competition is always good for business, and and the sport is a business as much as we'd like to look at it the way Henry Cejudo looks at it, but it's still a business, and I mean, but like him being an Olympian and stuff like that. But yeah, I wasn't too surprised. Now I just want to see what do you do now with it? They had all those guys pop for PEDs thus far for this. It's not a great look for them. I know Don Davis spoke at the Qatar Economic Forum, whatever it is, today. So I don't know if that's just them trying to get more funding for future, business stuff like or whatever that they have doing in the future. That's on YouTube, and I mean to watch that at some point, maybe over the weekend, to find out what he said there as far as the PFL goes. But I hope that it's not one of those things where it sinks them, because I do like the PFL format. Like I hope Ngannou doesn't wind up being more cost. I hope Ngannou gives them the return on their investment. That's what I hope.
Well, yeah, I mean, the if he doesn't fight, then obviously I don't think he's going to. Then they don't. I don't think it's all just guaranteed money, but maybe I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand that. So I don't think it's going to sink PFL. PFL apparently has backers like
Mm-hmm.
quite that are talking hundreds of
Yeah,
millions of
they got
dollars.
Hollywood money. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I don't think even if you even if Ngannou flushes you $10 million, that really shouldn't sink you. It's not like they have a high payroll. I don't think they have a lot of overhead. While they're not selling a lot of tickets, it's not like they're you know renting out the T-Mobile Arena either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't think they really push to sell tickets. It seems like it's pretty casual as far as um, them really trying to push the live product as opposed to just the TV being on ESPN and running that. You know, again, not to sound negative, but I think facts are facts when it comes to certain things. Like to hear the UFC, talk about them burning cash and stuff. So perhaps they're going through some cash to get established, but in the history books, the UFC kind of bragged about falling like $50 million in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then having to rebuild out of that. And that was part of the cost of establishing yourself and stuff like that. So, a lot of times you got to lose money to make money, and that time will tell on that. But I don't know if that's something you necessarily bash them about if they're spending some money to try to have a better product. Um,
Well, you have to look at where it's coming from too. I mean, of course they're going to bash him. They lost. You
Yeah,
know.
no, that's the thing, and that was another thing I was going to say is like as far as who won this,
Mm-hmm.
time will tell how much Ngannou, time will tell how much PFL, but I can tell you who didn't win at all, and that was the UFC. The UFC
Mm-hmm.
lost the best heavyweight on the planet. They lost a potential dream fight in Ngannou and John Jones. Um, I don't, they'll write the history books, so they're gonna manipulate how this is, kind of documented. But for the most part, people are going to have to recognize Ngannou. I mean, now you're going to have the UFC fans that we've talked about and stuff, but it's you can't disregard the fact that he demolished the guys that John Jones is kind of refusing to even go through the ranks of fighting. It's like pick and choose Stipe.
Mm-hmm.
Blade's obviously just lost, but he's still a top 5 heavyweight, and Ngannou finished him twice. Um, the Pavlovich is the new blood. John Jones seems to not even acknowledge he exists. So I think the hardcore fans are certainly going to always recognize Ngannou right now as the linear champion, and until he gets upset or something, and then people just go, okay, well, obviously the best heavyweights in the UFC now. Then
Mm-hmm.
until we get back to that point, I don't know. The UFC doesn't win. They lost. They got outbid for a superstar. Maybe not a superstar financially. That'll be wait to be seen. But
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I know the pay per views and all that stuff, but I just feel like you do better off if you just try to get on like a big television channel and run Ngannou on you know ABC owns Disney, just like the UFC gets on ABC because they have a deal with ESPN. So that would be the angle I'd try to be going. I'd try to be going to get out there. I don't know who you're going to get him to fight. And they're talking. There's no real early time frame for it, but he hadn't fought in 18 months in the UFC. That was the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dana White, like, we don't do that kind of thing. Like, you fight here. Well, no, you don't, because Ngannou didn't fight for 18 months under your banner. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
him going to the PFL and taking another year off is well, we missed one fight in the UFC. He was going to
Mm-hmm.
fight once every 18 months. I mean, and he'll get a boxing match. It might not be Fury, it might not be Wilder, but he's going to get one. He's going to get paid money. He'll get paid more than he would have got paid in the UFC. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think I think it's good for the sport. And like I said, I just support the guy for apparently. And then the thing he did for his opponent looks like a $2 million minimum purse.
Yeah.
I mean, what else can you say about that? You're going to have people trying to drop out of the
yeah.
UFC. This is going to be a
Yeah.
Fedor situation,
Yeah. Yeah.
with the affliction money trying to
Oh yeah, it's a good.
trying to
That's a
get
good
payday.
comparison. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
Arlovsky and Silva both got nearly $1 million paydays. Telling the UFC they want out and challenging themselves. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. I just feel like I know he had some surgery or something too, so I know that's part of the delay in him seeing him fight at whatever point. But I don't know. I just feel like making us wait till 2024 for an MMA fight for a guy that, like you said, that hasn't fought in 18 months. That's going to take a little. People are going to forget that, like you said. I mean, he was the best heavyweight. He, baddest man on the planet, whatever you want to call him. Especially sports fans, especially now the way they are. It's his stock. Drops a little the less you see him in action. This is all news. Otherwise, it's just all talking, and it's just all talking. I mean, we're in a weird space with you know, when you and I sat in front of Madison Square Garden for UFC 205. I don't think this is where we thought MMA was going to be the way that it is now, but um, that's like the double-edged sword of the sport finally getting to where we always wanted it to be. Now we just have these weird fights happening, and crazy news, and the gimmick boxing, MMA versus like there's so much that we didn't see coming, that now we're here, and it's like it's you have a lot of choices of stuff to watch and wait for, and I think they know that too. They're just looking to see what sells the most. You already got. I mean, Dana White's already talking about Tyson Fury and John Jones doing something a la McGregor Mayweather. So who knows?
He says that days after he says they don't do gimmick matches.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, it's hard to, like, and I don't care. I think it's funny that what Dana White says. I think he's actually kind of funny because he's just talking so much shit and so much gibberish. What I really think is funny is the people that hear it and are still so blinded by the fact that they don't think that they think they're being told like that's the truth, and it's like I just it's bizarre to me. It's a weird level of brainwashing in a sense,
Yeah.
but you know, on a good note for the UFC, um, you know, International Fight Week's not too far away down the corner. Not you know, good card. I know a lot of people are in love with it. I wouldn't say I think it's missing a huge top heavy main event. Rodriguez
Yeah.
Volkanovski is leaves a little bit uh, leaves me a little wanting a little bit more name wise, I guess. But it looks like July 29th, UFC 291 might be the actual summer, you know,
Yeah.
summer party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while the UFC doesn't do gimmick fights, they decided to also bring back the BMF title um, for a fight that is a rematch, a couple years in the making, and a fight that is obviously, I don't care what you want to call it, a fight that is a can't miss
Yeah.
fight.
Talk
Uh,
about a bad motherfucking fight. That's definitely
just
one.
Justin Gagey, Dustin Poirier,
Two.
to Salt Lake City on a card that honestly I is the card that makes me want to go to a fight again. Loving
Yeah.
everything I see about that card from top to bottom so far. Um, I will not be going to Salt Lake City due to some other stuff around that time, but man, I know that had to make your day when you saw your boy Gage
Oh
getting
yeah, yeah.
not only a main event but a rematch main event against another stud.
And what he wanted, when he did the fight against Fiziev, he was open about it afterwards. He was like, I did the company the favor. They wanted me to do this. I took this fight. I did what you wanted me to do. He's like, now I'm not fighting anyone ranked underneath me. I either want a title shot or I want Poirier or Oliveira again. And here we are. He's got Poirier again. The funny thing about it is when before it was official, and I forget where Dustin Poirier said it, but when they said that's one of your potential next fights, he actually said that's a fight that makes me nervous. So that's coming from somebody that beat him, and that started making me think about Eddie Alvarez, who also beat him, but also says he would never fight him again because of how what the experience of fighting Gaethje just seems to. I mean, like, yes, I'm a fan of Gaethje. I'm a big fan of Gaethje, big fanboy of Justin Gaethje. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows it. Guys that train with me know it. Like, I'm literally like, and if I haven't seen the odds yet, I don't even know the opening odds for it. But the formula for winning Justin Gaethje is to have him as an underdog, and the fact that he lost to Poirier, they're going to get it again. He's probably going to be the underdog, and this all to me just calculates to him bringing his best self. Justin Gaethje is a different type of athlete, and he's a different animal for this sport. And I wish that should be, if they could move that up to International Fight Week, that would definitely make me go there in a minute. But like you said, I might have to find a way to get to Sioux Falls because
Salt Lake City.
yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm just like, Jesus. It's that's definitely the if there's going to be a peak UFC fight for the summer, for me, that's it, 100%.
Well, you mentioned Sioux Falls real quick, so let's just jump into the announcement of Lencioni versus Gallagher. They
uh,
fight in Sioux Falls for
yeah,
Bellator. So,
I don't know
but
why I said that. That's probably why I said that, because
it was
that's
on your
another.
mind.
That's a
It's a
yeah.
good fight, though.
That's another great fight. I mean, they're both submission guys. I mean, I would imagine they're going to cancel out the each other's grappling and try to see who's got the better striking between the two of them. My only concern is I really like both fighters. I've spoken to both fighters. I like both fighters a lot. Um, but my only concern is Gallagher's injury prone. I hope he can stay fresh enough for this fight not to fall apart, especially with this being part of Lencioni's kind of, this is what his third fight back into full swing MMA, because he took the stint to become a father and do combat jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. So it's a good fight too, man. I mean, there's a lot of good MMA out there. You don't just have to watch the UFC like we always say.
No, but yeah, jumping back to Gagey Poirier. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, um, Poirier will be the favorite. I'm sure he'll be like, I think like a
Hmm.
minus 160 favorite. I mean, coming out just based off the fact the previous history of the fight. Um, and but man, I what a fight. One of the few fights that you could do a non-title main event for, although they got the gimmick belt apparently on the line with the
Hmm.
retirement of Jorge Masvidal. Man, I think that would be the one. That's the one to go to this summer. But it's crazy that they have the fight card the way that they got it laid out right now. I mean, I've had people already asking me about that event, which is pretty wild in itself for just some event, 3 months down the line. Um, but
So I'm just checking really quick. I'm on Odds Checker. Motherfuckers that didn't hire me. Uh, I'm trying to see because they usually post odds from everybody. So there's some early odds up, and as of right now, they have Gaethje is the underdog plus 106. Poirier is minus 120. So
so
that's
even
the
closer. It's a coin
hmm
flip.
hmm
Interesting.
that's as of right now. I mean, that's July 20th, May 24th. So
It's just a hell of a fight. I mean, even just to keep thinking about it, that's a fun fight. That
so the funny thing about that is what's there's a boxing. It's Spence and is this what's
Crawford and
Spence and
Spence
Crawford? Yeah,
potentially that night.
yeah. So and people are already talking about what are you going to watch? What are you going to watch? Honestly, these guys have delivered before. They always deliver when they fight. As far as like my value, if I'm going to buy a pay-per-view, you know, people are talking about which one are you going to watch? Are you going to buy both? There's two screeners or other means. You know what I mean? But like, who are you going to give your Saturday night to that night? I mean, obviously we lean MMA, so that's where I mean, for me personally, obviously that's where I'm going. Just in case I'll watch that. I'll watch that kid fight all every day, all day. But
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not gonna lie, that's a hell of a boxing match, dude. I mean, I'll be watching both. It would be hard for me to pick one or the other,
Hmm.
because they both uh, the boxing match has like legacy meaning,
Yeah.
while the UFC fight has kind of is just more of like, okay, like it doesn't really matter who wins, it doesn't really matter who loses. I mean, aside from you being a huge fan of either one of the guys, like just as a casual observer, somebody who just wants to see a brawl, you expect to get the Gotti
Hmm.
Ward kind of uh, you know battles out of both of those guys. And um, but it will be interesting because Gagey has kind of backed off in his last few fights as far as being just the hair on fire lunatic. He's kind of kicked
But
back
that's
a little
that's
bit.
also his worst part about him is because that's been kind of like why he's lost too.
It's his downfall for sure, but it's also what brings upon the like, just squashings of people. Physically heavy beat he beat the living hell out of for what 3 rounds, I guess it was.
I,
So
I always I always think of that. I laugh because I think about that clip of between rounds when he beat Ferguson and he's about to go nuts into his the craze of the battle that they're in and his coach is like, calm down, goddamn, this is what he's like, you always do this to yourself, calm down, because he knows he's like, if you put your mind there, you're just gonna throw the whole fight away because you want to throw your skeleton at the guy. But
no, that's wild. It's different. He's a different cat. That's
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I
No,
love it. I love that's
yeah.
why everyone loves watching him fight. I mean, even if he loses, he's gonna get some kind of bonus. So
I mean, it seems like a can't miss fight.
yeah,
Which is makes more. That's why it's weird that you'd hold off on something like that and keep it from fight week, because I think
yeah.
fight week you would want that. The whole theory behind fight week is that there's all this other stuff going on, and then it caps off with the main event of the UFC pay per view. So
Hmm.
it would seem to me that that the potential fireworks of that fight
Yeah.
uh, would be a no brainer. But
Speaking of just, I mean, because we're catching up on stuff because we had missed a couple of weeks in May. it's again, we're recording on the 24th. The new season of Ultimate Fighter starts next week. Do you really think we get? I mean, is there any part of you that has like a gut feeling that we're not going to get Chandler versus McGregor?
I think it happens. I don't think it's going to happen as soon as people want it to happen. I think we're looking at the end of the year at best. Um, but I think it will happen. I think it'll happen. I think McGregor's got too big of an ego to walk away and not and have to live with the walking away kind of thing, and the amount of trash talk that would go with it. I don't think he would walk away, and obviously Chandler wants that fight more than anything, just because it's going to be the financial bag that
that he needs,
that he can wrap up his career with, essentially. But
he's been a multiple time champion, and I mean, it'd be nice for him to get a UFC belt one day. But I mean, the damage he's taken thus far since he's been in the UFC, I think, has been pushing him further away from that. But the funny thing about the 6 degrees of separation between the fight we just talked about and this upcoming fight with them two, is that they asked Dustin Poirier who he thought he would win, and he thinks McGregor wins too, because of, obviously that left hand. If the leg doesn't really affect him, he thinks McGregor's timing and his striking would be a problem for Chandler. And when he said that, somebody posted a highlight of all of Chandler getting dropped in early rounds against everyone he's fought in the UFC. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, if McGregor's coming in, at his best, I could definitely see that happening with them two.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about this fight months ago, that was kind of my thing, was that I was kind of leaning McGregor more, just because of his straight punches and and the deterioration, in a sense, of Chandler physically over the years. And I mean, his chin and everything. I mean, you can't go through that many wars, but with also that said, like, McGregor's been dropped too, so it's not like, I'm not so sure that if he gets, if Chandler catches him, he's just going to go down just as easy. So it'll be interesting. I think Chandler has to go out there using his wrestling, which we talk about, or at least the heavy threat of it, because that'll be what'll get Connor off of his game.
Oddly enough, the early odds, because I still have the odds checker tab up, so I figured, I said, let me look. They both have them as minus. Hold on. So McGregor's minus 110 and Chandler's minus 105.
So they have it even, which is kind of weird right off the. I mean, I guess I don't think that's terrible odds, to be honest. I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to unfold. I just, but I'm giving more credence to like what McGregor looked like, at UFC 205, as opposed to what he's going to look like at, UFC 305 or whenever the hell this ends up happening. So that's true, but I wish the fight would have happened a couple years ago. It's one of those kind of for me, and when the night rolls around, obviously I'll be excited for it. But but right now, like, it's kind of, I guess let's wait and see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what McGregor looks like when fight time comes around, knowing
I think
why he's taken 2 years off.
I think I saw somewhere where Eddie Alvarez had advice for Chandler because of the history Chandler and Alvarez have together, and he could, and him having fought, talking about 205, him having fought and lost to McGregor. I mean, he was telling him to wrestle him, and I'm like, I feel like that's a no brainer when you think about fighting McGregor, just because of, even if you look at the fight against from UFC 189 against Chad Mendes, the wrestling was still successful for Mendes. It's just the cardio and those body shots that McGregor delivered with the front, the back kicks, the front snap kicks to the gut, and helped tire Mendes earlier. But I think that's when we saw the blueprint of the hole in McGregor's. I don't want to say the hole in his grappling, because that fight also showed how when he knows who he's fighting, how well he drills for his opponent. So I don't want to say that there's holes in his game, because when McGregor is, and I did watch 2 episodes of his Netflix thing, but it was also, it serves as a good reminder as to when he's dialed in, he definitely, like, he does his homework to the point that he makes his training. He designs the training that he does to for the man that he's got. He signed a contract against. And I think that's one thing that McGregor never gets enough credit for is how methodical he gets when it comes to an upcoming fight. Everybody pays attention to this guy, and they never pay attention to all the stuff he does in the training room. So, yeah. Plus, I mean, you can't deny what he's done for the sports.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, his weakness has always been the wrestling. That was
Mhm.
always his potential kryptonite. Obviously, some guys choose to use it. I don't know if I think that Chandler will not go out there and throw like a maniac. I kind
Mhm.
of think that he will, despite having the wrestling
Mhm.
advantage. But it kind of, are you willing to win ugly, or would you rather
Yeah,
lose in a spectacular fight? So
it's a good way to put it.
it's kind of like, a lot of guys don't like to want to, they don't want to be win ugly, and
Mhm.
they go out there with a game plan that's, at least questionable to us. I'm not a professional fighter. You're not a professional fighter, but when we've seen several cases where, you know, dudes who have what appears to be a huge favor, advantage on the ground, like to stand and bang. So,
Mhm.
um, but it's another good potential fight. I mean, it's a money making main event for the UFC down the line. Um, so hopefully we get it. Hopefully we get it this year. You got this Gagey. You do got the International Fight Week, which has some very very good fights. I'm excited for Blakovic and Pahea at 205, the co-main event for the Gagey Poirier fight. To me, that's a fight that gets me fired up. A couple of
Mhm.
bigger guys, and just to me, it's an interesting fight with a couple guys who have some characters, um, and you know, and puts together something good. Kevin Nicholson chiming in here. When Chandler fought Primus in 2018, he suffered nerve damage from the low leg
Mhm.
kicks. I think he had a similar but less severe issue with Gagey a couple years back. McGregor needs to exploit that. That's obvious. That's
Yeah.
obviously there. Um,
Yeah, we were both present for that too when that happened. I think, right? When weren't you? Didn't you come to the garden for that?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure for the
Yeah.
Chandler Primus fight.
Um, but I don't know if you heard Kevin, but McGregor broke his leg in his last fight. That might be a bit of a problem too, coming
Yeah,
back after.
we'll see how eager Connor is to throw his kicks,
Yeah.
and I mean it's all set up for stand and
Mhm.
Wang punches, uh, but it is a good
Boxing with
one.
MMA gloves. I mean, I feel like that actually favors McGregor. I mean, again, we
Yeah,
were
oh, it does
welterweight,
for
but
sure.
yeah.
If we take away the ground potential, um, because we know McGregor's not going to take down and beat up. We wouldn't expect McGregor to take down Chandler, but we
Kevin
could. But the
Kevin
reverse.
Kevin Nicholson, since you're chiming in, he's a physical therapist. We've had him on the podcast in the past. Really quick, just because since we know you're watching, how do you think as somebody that with your expertise, how do you think uh, seeing McGregor walking around and stuff, how do you think he moves in the come fight time? Like, how does an injury like that affect one's mobility? Like, I don't even know how you would train to. I don't know. I don't even know how you would train to really. I mean, I'm amazed when Anderson Silva did it. Chris Weidman just did a grappling
You're
match
just
with.
talking about the pure guts it takes to be
Yeah, yeah,
willing to
just
do what's
yeah.
necessary to win fights while knowing that your
Like
leg could
I'm
completely
just
snap
wondering
in
like
half.
what how like you know we've seen him doing other things training, but everyone's commenting about how big. Obviously McGregor's walking around with a lot of size. I'm giving Nicholson some time to type his answer, but it's just like I don't know, man. I just feel like with something like that, like say he throws a kick and he catches Chandler's elbow. Does it make him cringe? You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yeah, I think it has to.
Yeah.
I mean, the adrenaline might fight through it a little bit, but obviously, but
Like
How
there's
could it?
got to be some shell shock there, especially if that happens exactly the way, like, he likes to throw that kick to the body, to the soft tissue, and Chandler drops that elbow right on it and catches it. That's literally how the damage started in the against when he had it happen against Poirier. So I'm just like, I don't know, man. I feel like the plus all the USADA stuff that they're talking about. I know I know he's going to get an exemption, but we'll see. So here's Kevin Nicholson's answer. I think he'll be fine. The bone is stable, just a matter of strength. He may cringe, but that's probably a psych issue. Yeah, it's definitely mind over matter. I agree with that. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's I want to see the fight. I hope it doesn't fall through. I hope I hope the exemption paperwork goes through quickly for McGregor so we can see it. You think they do it at 185? Did you see that clip?
Oh God. I,
He's like,
no.
"You'll do as you're told."
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Chandler can't let that happen. Chandler doesn't want to fight him at 185. Chandler's a lightweight who's already
Mm,
ballooned up at 170. Like, I mean, they both are, but one of them's taking 2.5 years off
mhm.
to juice. And get right. It is what it
Yeah,
is. It is what it is.
yeah.
Nobody can tell me different. I will never believe anybody if they told me that he just decided to, you know, take a 2-year sabbatical from drug testing and not do drugs. Um, that
The
seems
performance
absolutely
enhancing
crazy.
kind, not the other ones that are fairly obvious.
Yeah, yeah. Um, will they allow them to do those? So you wouldn't have to drop out of the test
That's
for
right.
those.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Good fight. Hopefully it happens. I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen probably the end of December, maybe Vegas.
Yeah. Expect
Uh,
a lot of Ultimate Fighter chat when we when we obviously the season's gonna start next week and we'll be when we're recording stuff. So but we'll get some guests lined up too. I mean, again, we're out of our crazy season of shit happening, so we'll start getting some guests lined up this summer. And in the meantime, you'll have to deal with my audio interviews from that I have for this upcoming Expectation Sports event.
yep. So yeah, pay attention to the interview after this show. Ed picks up with Ras Hylton. Follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Twitter, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and
On
Instagram.
MMA Twitter.
You're popping up Kevin's comments on the screen while I'm trying to go through the rundown. So yeah, MMA Hawk 21. You'll find me. Follow Ed at Carbazel on Twitter, Carbeersall on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch, and as always, uh, allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories.
And always
Have a
on MMA Twitter.
uh, sounds good, Ed. Next week, looking at a Thursday show, gonna have a
Mhm.
small adjustment, schedule adjustment, which I know we've had again like a lot of lately, but I don't think this is something that's gonna be too common. But next Thursday, we'll be fired up, ready to go again. And thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night.
Yep, back to our regularly scheduled programming somewhat.